Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers.
All right, Jack Posobiec, here we are back. Human Events Daily here live, Washington, D.C. Folks, let me tell you something. This summer is not just hot. It's actually historic. And I don't just mean the heat. I'm talking about all of the weather. Flash flood warnings are at a 40-year high, and it's not slowing down. Towns are underwater. Roads washed out. Earthquakes. And in every crisis zone, what do you see? The same thing. Crowds standing in line, and they're waiting. They're waiting for bottled water. They're waiting for food. They're waiting for someone to show up and save them. They tell you help is on the way, but what if it's not? What if help takes days, or it doesn't come at all? You think the system is built to protect you? They can barely handle one emergency, let alone dozens. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be the one caught empty-handed. No, not Poso. So for right now, My Patriot Supply is giving away 4 weeks of emergency food. How do you get it? It's simple. You go to mypatriotsupply.com/Jack to find out how to claim your free 4-week food supply and join millions of Americans who are preparing with My Patriot Supply. Claim your free 4-week kit today at mypatriotsupply.com/Jack. That's mypatriotsupply.com/Jack. Throw some in the back of your trunk. Throw one of these in your garage. You will have the peace of mind that you need when your family or yourself are facing any of these issues. All right, folks, we're very excited now. We've got the publisher of Human Events, Jeff Webb, joining us here on Human Events Daily. Once again, Jeff, how are you?
Hey, Jack, good to be with you.
All right, so we're fresh back off of my Poland trip, right there on the border of Ukraine, where certainly Warsaw, Ukraine was a huge topic of discussion during that presidential election, one where the Polish president is now representing the country and he was just on a call this morning with President Trump on sort of the preview as we're on the upswing just 2 days away from what we're calling the Anchorage Accords with President Trump and Vladimir Putin. You've been involved in so many international deals. You've been around the world working on working around these organizations. What should people be looking at when you're going in at an executive level with a huge meeting like this? What should people on the outside be looking for?
Well, I think that traditionally, if you get to a point where you have the two presidents meeting, a deal has usually already been hammered out. I'm not sure that's the case here. And I think, though, that, President Trump has expressed his frustration about this war and talked about it not being one that would not have started under his watch. And I think that it's the two parties have been more intransigent than he figured they would be. And something has to break the logjam. And I think they've made some progress behind the scenes, but I think there's really going to be some one-to-one kind of brainstorming here. And it's just, you can see everybody weighing in now. The Europeans are weighing in, the Ukrainians are weighing in about, what they want the outcome to be. I think everybody's afraid that Trump is going to, cut some kind of really bad deal with Putin and he's going to be taken advantage of, which I don't think that's going to happen. But I think there's a lot of mystery to this one, I think.
When you go into a meeting like this, there's been a lot of discussion and people are saying, who's President Trump going to bring with him? When you look at in terms of the delegation, I think we could expect, obviously, his National Security Council, but, so that would be Secretary of State, of course, I'm sure will be there, as well as the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. Wouldn't surprise me, of course, J.D. Vance, the Vice President. But there could be some others, maybe a Bessent, Treasury, or Lutnick you get in. So obviously these questions about the sanctions, that all runs through Treasury and Commerce. Who do you think, or I put it this way, when we in the media and we are looking at this from the outside, do you think that all plays a role, or is that something that's really just more of a media buzz kind of thing?
No, look, I think we all know that Trump is very big on using trade and industry and resources as bargaining chips, or really creating relationships that provide an incentive for another country to get in line, to overcome maybe some geopolitical differences, to take advantage of what that potential trade relationship can be. And my bet is he's loaded with those things because that's his modus operandi, and that will be one big arrow in his quiver. He'll probably play it pretty quickly, and it's probably been peaked at by the Russians going into this. But I tell you, Jack, you and I have had this discussion for a number of years about this situation, how bad it is and how tough it is, and kind of the historical background of this whole part of the country and these peoples, and it's really, really complicated. There is not an easy solution, and I think that I think if people think that the Russians are going to get up and leave and not get any land and just going to go home because they're going to get an oil deal, that's not happening. That's just not their history.
Well, and I think that's right. And even so, Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, came out earlier today and said that discussions more than likely would start from the current line of contact. And this has been a bloody war, an absolutely bloody war to get even to this point. J.D. Vance, I think, said something similar. He was on an interview this weekend talking about the current line of contact as opposed to the full territories, because one of the differences here for folks who are, kind of just coming at this from, fresh, is that even though Russia has annexed these 4 provinces, they don't have complete operational control over those 4 areas. And so they're currently they only have really over one of them, which is Lugansk. The other one, Donetsk, they've got, maybe 65, 70% of it, but there's still a huge amount of the province that is under Ukrainian control. So this, I think, is what Merz and what J.D. Vance are talking about. And so, when it comes down to it, though, Jeff, when you look at the situation on this battlefield right now, the collapses that we've been talking about, when President Trump put out there his deadline saying, hey, 50 days, now it's 12 days, okay, now it's 10 days, now it's Friday, is the speed and the velocity of this really being predicated by the fact that, honestly, the Ukrainian army right now, it seems as though the front line is collapsing.
They're definitely on their heels, it seems like, doesn't it? And so then the question becomes, if they're on their heels, what is that tipping point where, that the Russians begin to really accelerate all of their gains, and then what's the answer? Then what leverage do the Ukrainians have to bring the Russians to the peace table? So it's a complicated situation. There is one person in the world who would have a chance to work it out, and it won't be without its critics. But I think it's hard to underestimate President Trump. He just has such a track record of success. Maybe this will be the one that he doesn't get, but I wouldn't underestimate him.
No, neither would I. And I think your point on trade is salient. We were mentioning earlier in the program how if you're in Russia, or if you're visiting Russia, or just if you're a Russian citizen, you can't use a Visa card right now. You don't have any access. So if you've got money in a bank account that uses Visa, MasterCard, you can't have access to that because of the sanctions. You have to go through this whole crazy, convert to cash in Europe kind of situation. If you're not traveling, you probably can't even get it out at all. So there are some key things, key levers that I think President Trump has on the trade perspective in connection with these sanctions that he could grant relatively quickly.
No, I think you're right. I mean, the sanctions are the sanctions. They're real. They hurt. They can be turned up even more. They can be turned up on their allies, as we've seen. When you're looking at what they could potentially do to India and trying to cut off that, those transactions for their oil and gas from Russia. So there's still we wouldn't. The sanctions are tough now. They can get tougher, but the Russians are tough, stubborn people, and I say that, I don't say that necessarily negatively. I mean, It served them well. You and I have talked about what they did during World War II. The Russians lost 26 million people in World War II. They lost 9 million soldiers. And, they have their own paranoia. And it's just something, when you go into negotiation, you have to also try to think about whether you agree with it or not, or whether you think it's rational or not. You have to look at the main concerns of the person on the other side, because that's the only way you're going to get to a deal. So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch. It is kind of the negotiation.
They're clearly willing. And they're clearly willing to go all the way. And you mentioned World War II, and some of those battles happened over this very same terrain where these current battles are now being fought. Jack Posobiec, we're on with Jeff Webb, the publisher of Human Events. We're talking Anchorage Accords, 2 days away. Real America's Voice, right back.